Hi, welcome to my video. So in this video I'm going to be addressing some problems with KDE, or personal problems that I have with KDE. Let's just say it that way. So KDE, when it comes to workspaces, it tends to isolate other applications that are opening up into other workspaces out of the box. I mean, there is an option probably where you can interact with open applications and have your panel bar like go back to it when you click on it. But let's say like I open Terminal and Dolphin, okay? And let's say I go to workspace 2, which they're already open in here. But all right, so yeah. So yeah, this is kind of confusing. So workspace 1, is this workspace 1? So okay, so I have two applications open in workspace 1. Okay, they're already open, and I'm not like right clicking it to open up a new window. They're already open. So let's say if I go to workspace 2, okay? Now, workspace 2 is where I have these applications. I thought I was already in workspace 1. So I was in workspace 2 when I thought I was in workspace 1. Anyways, yeah, this is kind of confusing. So in workspace, or desktop 1, that's what it's called in KDE, I guess, out of the box. So desktop 1, I have Dolphin, and I have Kitty Terminal open. So in desktop 2, I do have these two applications open. Well, let's say I want to go back to my Dolphin and go back to Kitty Terminal. Okay, since I already have these applications open and I'm not right clicking it to open up a new window box, but when I do right click these, it doesn't give me the option to open up a new window box. You see what I mean? If you go on Windows, or you go on Mac OS, or even GNOME, when you right click on an application, it gives you the options to open up a new window or a new application of the same application up. Or if it's already open, it will bring you back to that workspace and where the application is. But when I have these two applications open in desktop 1, right? See? In desktop 1, I have those two applications open. See right there? Kitty and Dolphin. So I'm gonna go to desktop 2. I'm in desktop 2. This is desktop 2. So let's say I click on the Kitty application. It should go to the one that's already open in desktop 1, right? That's what happens. Okay. I want to go back to Dolphin that's in desktop 1. So I go to my panel. That happens. You get what I'm saying? Now let's say if I have Discord open in desktop 1 and I go to desktop 2 and have Firefox, and I was watching a bunch of videos on YouTube, and I found this really cool video I wanted to post into my Discord server, which is on desktop 1, but my Firefox is on desktop 2. So let's say I have the icon pinned to my panel bar, okay? And I click on the icon. It ain't gonna go to the Discord that's already open on desktop 1 while I'm on desktop 2. It will open up another Discord application because it's isolated. These workspaces do not work dynamically all together. You know what I mean? It's not universal. You go on GNOME, you have an application open in one workspace, and you have something working on a different workspace. When you go on your dock and you click on that application, it's got to go to the application. Windows does that. Mac OS does that. So does GNOME. This is actually a common workflow. You use OpenBox, you use Fluxbox. It does that too. Okay? But on KDE, what it does, it isolates the program, so it just always launches the program, even though it's open on another workspace. You're on a different workspace. It treats it like if it's another session of KDE. So each workspace works like a single desktop. I don't like that. I want the desktop to work all together. Okay? They call it a dynamic. K-Win is supposed to be a dynamic window manager. If it's dynamic, then why is it not working like a dynamic window manager? Why is Mutter works a lot better than K-Win? Now, the thing I like about KDE, system tray, desktop icons, and the customization. But as far as that goes, I don't like anything else about KDE. I don't. I find GNOME has a better settings application when it comes to setting up like your desktop. I find GNOME is more keep it simple. It's more minimalistic. I know it's less customization, but I think the desktop looks good. I think the workflow is really good in GNOME. I think they really ace a lot of things like that. But when it comes to having like basic features, which they used to have, like system tray and desktop icons, I know people say like, who cares about desktop icons? Yeah, I could live without desktop icons really. I don't really use them that much on the desktop. It's probably just more like me being used to having them on the desktop because almost every operating system like Mac OS, I definitely use a desktop a lot, like desktop icon on Mac OS because I work. I don't know. Just the way Mac OS is, I like to work on the desktop. It's just the way the system works. Like it mounts a lot of things, like your hard drives. When you get programmed, it mounts it, and you have to drag it to applications. It's just the way the system works there, and how you install applications, how to mount things. All of it is on the desktop. So you like it takes a lot of good use of the desktop icons, and it actually makes it useful. Windows is kind of a mixed bag. I can live without desktop icons, but they do have their trash bin on the desktop. You can't put it on the panel bar, so therefore we have to use the recycle bin on the desktop or in File Manager, right? Or File Explorer, I don't know what it's called. File Explorer on Windows, okay, same shit. You guys get what I'm saying. So what GNOME and KDE done is that you could actually, well, KDE you can put the trash bin on the desktop, okay, but it's not there by default either. What these two desktop environments are trying to do is like Windows, like just use the file manager to use your recycle bin or trash bin. So pretty much what I'm trying to say is that like GNOME is missing some of those features that, even though they're old features and they're trying to like just make more of a modern sort of minimalistic, bare bone, but try to not make, they're trying to make a desktop that's less distracting and to do work and get work done. I find GNOME it's a really good kind of like desktop environment when it comes for developers, when they're programming, or even like system administrators, like people that works in IT or system administrator, like they really designed these kind of desktops for that kind of workflow. Though I mean they do include extensions, but I think that the extensions are kind of neat part of GNOME, but I think that we don't really need extensions. Maybe like they're basically applets. GNOME always had these in the past as well. So extensions is nothing new. They're just basically applets. Extension and applets are pretty much the same thing. They just changed the name to extension. Before it used to be called applets in GNOME 2. So, I mean, this is something that we didn't really use much on GNOME 2 because GNOME 2 had pretty much a lot of the default features that most users like. Most users just like having, desktop icons, a system tray, and a little bit of customization. Like theme and stuff like that. GNOME kind of took the theme, like you still can theme in GNOME, but you need tweaks. Tweaks is not a part of GNOME. It's not a separate application that someone made for GNOME, where you can basically, add things to GNOME that normally default GNOME does not have. Like they took out the maximize and minimize button for whatever reason. I understand. I get it. When you use a tile window manager system, you don't have a window tile bar. So when people complain about like GNOME only has the close button, well, it's because the way GNOME is designed is that they take a lot of they want people to use the way they designed it. They kind of took a lot of ideas from the tile window manager. Tile window managers, and especially even Fluxbox and OpenBox, these kind of window managers, they use a lot of workspaces, and they rely on workspaces. So a tile window manager, especially in tile mode, a workspace, the application, it always puts the application in full screen. You open another application, it will basically put two of them side by side, and it kind of just opens up applications, and it kind of fits all the window box into your screen resolution. Though it fits it all nice and perfectly in the dimensions of your screen size and resolution. So what GNOME is trying to do is that they actually in GNOME 45 they put this thing called the workspace switcher, which is actually really good, because before it used to be called applications, and it ran mostly how KDE is now. This is basically kind of the old school GNOME. This is how GNOME used to work. They used to have you have to hit that top corner, and you can switch between different workspaces, and then they have their dock on the bottom. They used to have it on the side, they put it on the bottom. But I think the GNOME dock should be visible within the overview and on the desktop itself. And I think that GNOME also needs to have some extensions or applets like recyclable bin and mounted drives on the dock, because since they took out desktop icons and they're not present on the desktop, usually when you mount a drive or you have a recyclable bin or a trash bin, it's usually on the desktop. Because we're used to that. We're used to that on Mac OS, and we're used to that on Windows, especially Windows. But when there's mounted drives on Mac OS, it's present. When there's a trash bin on the desktop, it's present. So we're kind of used to both of that. Mac always have the trash bin on the dock. So having the trash bin on the dock on GNOME, people are used to having the trash bin on the dock if they use Mac OS. And if you use Windows, people are used to having the trash bin on the desktop. But since we don't have desktop icons on GNOME, it should be on the dock. That's just a personal opinion. I think that would be quality of life for GNOME. Quality of life features for GNOME. There you go. Also have mounted drives. On Windows, mounted drives are only accessible through your My Computer or File Explorer. And what else? On Mac OS is on the desktop. Same as Linux. A lot of desktop environments, or at least the older version of these desktop environments, like GNOME used to have mounted drives on the desktop. So does XFCE4, which copied GNOME for that, because that's where the idea came from the beginning with. It came from GNOME. GNOME always used to have mounted drives on the desktop, and even the trash bin. So when I used to use Linux way back in the day, it seemed like I had more features in the older GNOME than I do have in the newer GNOME. Though the new GNOME actually has a very, very, very good workspace. They went all out with the workspace flow on GNOME. Back then on the old GNOME, the workspace on the old GNOME was terrible. We never used it really. I mean, we had the feature, but we just didn't use it that much. But it was there, you know what I mean? But what you see today's GNOME, it's all about the workspaces, right? And the reason why they took out maximize and the minimize button off the Windows title bar is because you only need an application to close. You don't need to maximize or minimize button when you can just take the application and just, you know, drag it to the top of the screen and it will show like a way to maximize it. Or you can actually drag it into the corner and it will show you, like, you can tile it like sort of manually. You know what I mean? Like flex, like snap, like Windows has snap, it does that. So they figure like we don't really need to minimize the application because we want, you know, people that's working on a project to have their project, like they want to have no interference, no things like interfering with their work. Like if you're working, it keeps people more focused. When you have a lot of distraction, it makes it hard for users to focus on the work. I mean, they still can focus on it, but like especially like a programmer or a developer, you know, like the less distraction you have, the better, like, you know, you can do your work and get work things done. And that's how, like, when they make GNOME, that's how they really think about it. And I get the workflow a lot, but there's probably more people that uses Linux that are gamers and just regular users. Okay, so a lot of us, if not everybody, even the old school Unix beer nerds from the 70s and 80s, like that, they're now 50 years old or above. Okay, nothing wrong with them. I respect the old Unix people. I do. I have all respect for them. I really do. We all came from Unix. Like me, I grew up in the 80s. I grew up in the 90s. So I use Unix. I use MS-DOS. I use like me, my generation. I was like pretty much the last of the Generation X. I'm basically like between Generation X and the millennials. I'm like the lost generation, they call it. So I'm like right in the middle. I'm like basically a nobody. Like everybody complains about their generation. The Zennials are basically the forgotten generation. I'm like the forgotten people. No one really cares. From like 1979 to like 84, it's like they call it the Zennial. It's like a transition getting out of the Gen X into the Gen Y, the millennials. They call me like I was known as the millennial, but I'm nothing like a millennial. Like I see the millennial people, and I'm more like the Generation X. Like I actually feel like I'm more like a Generation X because I grew up pretty much like the younger Generation X people that are born like 78, 77. We all kind of grew up in the same generation. We all watch the same TV shows. We all play the same video games. We all use the same consoles. I might be a little bit younger, but I grew up in the same generation, and I still remember the 80s, and I still remember the 90s really well. But people that are like the younger Generation X and like the grandfather of millennials, which is I'm basically am, like I'm like the first year of the millennials, like the old school millennial, the grandfather, I should say. So I basically, you know, grew up with Unix, Atari. I grew up with I grew up with the evolution of the internet, the evolution of you know, communication devices becoming like mobile. I grew up. I see that becoming mobile phones, and I see like a lot of technology that's from the 80s and 90s and just evolved to how things are today. I grew up with a lot of transition, and a lot of people have a hard time to transition off X11. I'm used to changing all the time because that's pretty much my generation. When we grew up changing, everything changing. There's war stop, war again. You know what I mean? So there's always like, see, like when I was young, there's always been wars, and we were always like, we always think that, you know, the world's coming to the end. Like 2000, oh, the world's gonna end, or you know, 2012, oh, the world's gonna end. Like it's just, I know, it's crazy. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. My point is that a lot of us, a lot of the people that are using computers, grew up in the 80s and 90s, even early 2000s. And what I'm trying to say is that we're used to using Windows, Mac OS, and Unix systems like CDE. I'm talking about like open Windows and, you know, Unix systems, which are very similar to Windows a lot. So let's just say Windows in general, we all kind of grew up on Windows. Even though you don't like it, you hate it, we all grew up on it. Windows was popular, it was everywhere, it was used in work, it was used in schools, it was used at your house, it was everywhere. And it still is to this day, but now we have more options than we ever did. Because we had Linux, we had Mac OS, it just wasn't as popular as it is nowadays. But back then, Windows was the shit, and it still is the shit. Okay? So what I'm trying to say is that we grew up with Windows. We're used to the workflow. We're used to having a system tray. We're used to having desktop icons. We're used to having, you have applications open. You go to another workspace. I mean, like, I know I can't relate this to Windows, but Mac OS, it worked like that. When you click on the open application on a different workspace on the dock, it will bring you back to that workspace with the open application. GNOME does this too, but KDE does not do that. That's why I don't like about KDE. I don't like their panel. I think the panel is great that you can customize it and do stuff with it, but it is definitely not dynamic. Workspaces do not work together with applications. So if you have one application open on one workspace, it won't go to the other application to the other workspace. I never used KDE like that. I always started using workspaces because I've been using a lot of Talon managers lately in GNOME, so I was just kind of taking that workflow and put it into KDE. Then I'm thinking like, holy shit, this is why I don't even use a workspace in KDE. Now I remember, because applications always launch new application on each workspace because they're isolated, they're not dynamic, which really the immersion of the workflow of KDE is terrible. It's very old school. Like, this is like Windows 95 kind of like workflow. It's terrible. Like when they include like this power toy tools, whatever, and Windows XP, which gave us virtual desktops. That's how KDE works. Like it would just run the application within that workspace, and if you have another application open at a different workspace, it'll just open up a new application of the same application. You know what I mean? It'll just open up a new window of that application. It won't go back to the one that's already open. So KDE is kind of old school when it comes to workspaces. They should really get with it and look at GNOME, what they're doing with their workspaces, and include that into their desktop environment. Also, KDE is very buggy when it comes to a lot of things, especially NVIDIA. It's buggy. Not all applications, but when it comes to, like, I know it's a plastic sync, and they're gonna fix that in 6.1. I know. That's in June. I know. The new beta driver for NVIDIA is supposed to fix a lot of the implicit sync. Yes, I know. But what I'm trying to say is that KDE is very buggy. GNOME, I go on GNOME. It might not have a system tray. It might have not the desktop icons. But man, does it ever work very good. It is very stable. It works really good. It's snappy. And I'm not bragging on GNOME. I am kind of bragging it up. I should say, like, but I like them both. Is what I'm trying to say. But I'm just saying GNOME work so much better. What I wish GNOME would have is have the system tray, desktop icons, and just more customization when it comes to the panel. We can move it around, customize it like KDE, and just have like different themes, or at least like we can change the color of the, like, have color palettes of, like, how like for example, go to settings here. And if I go to here, and like they have like, you know, colors. I wish that GNOME would have this. Like, you can choose your accent colors, but I'm talking about like schemes. Have like color schemes. Like, I know like you have a dark theme, you have a white theme. Let's say like I want to take that dark theme and I just want to just not have it like regular like gray, dark gray. Let's say I want something like a Tokyo Night color scheme for GNOME. I think GNOME 47 should have where we can change the color scheme of our GTK application GUI interface. This I would like to have. Because I can accept default GUI. I think the GTK4 GUI by default looks nice. I think the default KDE GUI looks great. I don't really care for themes. Because I'm a person that really likes tile window managers when we don't even have a window box, a window title bar, this thing on top. Or have buttons, or close button, or minimize button. People are like, oh, well, GNOME does not have minimize. Oh, GNOME does not maximize. I don't care for that. I really don't. I don't care if it has no window title bar. Seriously, I don't really care for that. What I care about is like color schemes, because when you write a desktop or you write a window manager or a Windows compositor, WC now they call them, instead of like way that they don't call them window manager, they call them WC. So when you have a WC, they don't have desktop icons. They don't have, you know, window title bar. What they have is just the window toolkit box. Okay? And when it comes to Ryzen, it comes to color schemes. Just like a lot of the Ryzen I consider is you raise your stuff in your terminal and you always apply color schemes, customize your prompt for your shell, and basically that's what Ryzen's all about. People think that Ryzen is just changing your theme of your GUI interface, when a lot of WCs and WMs, they mainly don't have any window title bar. It's just a toolkit. So color schemes is very important, I consider, when it comes to theming. I like basic stuff, but I do like to have a color scheme. I like to have palettes. I think the colors palettes really spice up your system. That's how like CDE worked, like in Unix. They didn't really have any themes for it, but they had color palettes where you can change the colors of your interface. Just like Windows 3.1 was like this a lot as well. You see, to me, I think even old technology of things, or just old ways of theming, even like in Commodore and old like, you know, like console shells of Unix back in the 80s, just having the ability to change different colors and color schemes and palettes really makes a difference. So I think GNOME needs to work on having these color schemes. I think KDE does that really well. That's one thing I could say I like about KDE, is the color schemes. I do really like that a lot. I wish that we have that in GNOME. You see, like, I like a lot of features in GNOME, and I like a lot of features in KDE. I just wish that they had one desktop that took both of them and just merged them together. I hope Cosmic can do this and do it well. Please, Cosmic, just hear me out. Color schemes, dynamic workspace and application workflow like GNOME, GNOME layout. It's really great. I like Cosmic because it has very much the GNOME layout, but also the dock that they have is visible on the desktop. They don't have desktop icons. That's fine, but we need outlets for trash bin and mounted drives for our dock on Cosmic. I would really appreciate that. Please make applets for that, because I like to have them on my dock, like macOS. Yes, I know. I like that. It reminds me of macOS. Make it similar to macOS. I do like the tile feature in Cosmic. I do like the workspace numbers. You can add on to the system. Very tile style. I love that. I love that you can change the shape of it. You can have it rectangular. You can have it circle. That's cool. I like that they have the system tray. That's really good to have. I like that they have like the tiling built in out of the box, and you could have it. You can have one workspace all tiling. You can have another workspace all stacking or floating, which is really cool. So I'm really hoping a lot of polish into Cosmic desktop, and I hope that it would be like very universal desktop environment. We can install it on any kind of distribution. I know it's in the AUR of Arch Linux. I prefer to be on the mainline repositories of Arch Linux and through Pacman. So I hope hopefully it becomes mainline in Arch Linux, because I don't want to use Ubuntu. Even though it doesn't have Snap and Pop! OS, I don't want to use Ubuntu. I wish Pop! OS would be based on Arch, to be fair, but it's not, unfortunately. But I will be testing out the Alpha ISO when it does come out. I do have a ThinkPad, which I will be testing it out on that device, and I will do some videos on that as well, live videos and screencast videos of this system, like live video of me installing it on the ThinkPad and just my first impression, and just showing you like how it is like live, that is how it is on the ThinkPad itself and how it looks like on the laptop itself. And I will also show you screencasts of me showing you the desktop running it on the laptop itself. So stay tuned for that. I will be doing some videos on that in the future, but I just realized at 3 o'clock in the morning is pretty late. I should get some rest. But I've been thinking about desktop on Linux, and I've been frustrated. And I don't know, man. I say this before, and I'll say it again. Like, I feel like just taking my Mac M1, my Mac Mini M1, and just put it back on my TV and use Mac OS as my couch setup instead of using Linux. As much as I like Arch Linux, I do like Arch Linux. I like Arch Linux as a whole, but when it comes to the GUI part of Linux, it's terrible. I do like GNOME, but I have to use some extensions to make it an actual useful desktop for me. And these are just basic stuff that I think that it should already be on, if not was on GNOME before. Like system tray and desktop icons was always part of GNOME. Though I do like the new features that they add, like the workspace switcher is really great. I do like the dock that they have in GNOME, but I wish it would be visible on the desktop. And I also wish that it'd be more customizable and we could add a trash bin and mounted drives onto the dock, or just have it default on the dock, because unfortunately we don't have desktop icons to access to our trash bin or our mounted drives. We have to do everything in Nautilus, which is kind of stupid. I like to have fast access to just do it on my dock. I'm used to that on Mac OS. But anyways, that is my rant. But I really try to like KDE. I have nothing against it, but I probably might go back to it in the future. But as the current state, like I'm not a KDE guy. I like it. I want to like it. I really try my best, and I don't hate it. I think it has a lot of great things in it. I just don't like their panel. If I could just use the GNOME panel and the GNOME like shell on top of KDE, KDE desktop, I might as well use GNOME, to be honest. I just don't like their panel. I do like the system tray and the customization, but I don't like the workflow of their workspace and panel and just how it works. I don't like the isolation. I don't like that. A lot of people like it. Maybe. I don't. I'm not used to it either. I'm not going to adapt to it either. You know, you can't train old dog new tricks, right? So I'm just going to stick with GNOME because it's just something I'm used to with other operating systems, and I like to just keep it simple, really. I think KDE it's not really keep it simple. It's just too much in one distribution. It's too much, and I say distribution, I mean desktop environment. There's too much in KDE. There's customization, there's a lot of freedom, but it's just too much that I don't really care about all this theming and icons and customization. I really don't give a crap about that. What I care about is more just workflow, having everything that I just need a system tray. I need desktop icons. Just need a normal panel, a normal workspace switcher, and color schemes, and that's it. I'm happy with that. I'm a simple guy. I like things simple. That's why I like GNOME. Anyways, guys, thanks for the watch. Have a good one. Cheers.